Hello, everybody. I'm Kevin Allen, the hockey writer for USA Today, and I'm joined by my long.
All right, looks like I lost my good buddy here, Kevin Allen. All right, guys, it's the Laidlaw and Allen report. Kevin will be getting back on with us soon here. A lot of topics to discuss today. Kevin and I are actually off camera talking about. Kevin, are you there?
Yeah, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, I know. I went into kind of the twilight zone there. All of a sudden, I saw myself spinning, and I said, "Did I see the light? Like, what's going on here?"
You know what it was? We got a new discussion before we got on air. We got a new discussion about politics, and your computer got the whammy on it. So
yeah, and Tom and I don't agree on politics. Let's just leave it at that.
But you know what, though? I do like the fact that we're able to have a discussion about it and not like end up hating each other when we're done. We don't.
Well. And that's what needs to happen in the real world. Like you and I can disagree, and you know, I think if we sat down over a beer, I'm sure we could solve most of the problems. We could both give and take, and you know, make it work. But in the real world, the guys that need to do that don't seem to be capable of doing that. So, anyway, let's get started today. You know, Tom, we've talked about it before, and now since we had our last podcast, Don Cherry has been fired, and I actually quoted you in my story because you told a great story about your dad seeing Don Cherry praise you on Hockey Night in Canada once. And tell the story if you would.
Yes. So I got traded to the Los Angeles Kings, and back in those days, you had those big, wide satellite dishes that you could use to get all the games. Well, anything, but we used them to watch hockey games. And I had actually, funny story, a little add to it. I bought my father one. I was going to surprise him. I had the guy show up at his door with this big satellite dish. My father threw him out. He wouldn't accept it. He was that old, stubborn old farm boy, and there's no way his son was going to buy him a satellite dish. So we had to get on the phone and negotiate a settlement so that I paid half and he paid half. They sent the guy back there and he installed a satellite dish. But my father was watching a game. I believe we were in Calgary. I was playing with the King. It was a Hockey Night Canada game, and Scotty Bowman was doing the color commentating. And I don't know how. I was in the offensive zone, which didn't happen very often. I went flying over the goaltender and went headfirst on the boards. And the play-by-play gentleman said, "Oh, man, I don't know who that is, but he's not getting up from that hit." And Scotty Bowman jumped up and said, "Well, no, that's Tom Laidlaw. He'll get up. He always gets up." And it was like Don Cherry was in between periods kind of reiterated that. That play and how that I always get up. That was my reputation. And my father, that was a proud moment for him. Like he was that old farm boy where he was happy for me that I played in the NHL. He was happy if I scored a goal, but that reputation of being somebody that always got up. I mean, that was the true grit life. That was the farm boy life. That's the way he lived his life. And to have his son, on national television being, that was his reputation now was a big moment. And the fact that it was Scotty Bowman and Don Cherry, and even more, they were two iconic figures in the game of hockey. They were then, and they certainly are now.
Yeah, and your thoughts on the dismissal? He survived so many incidences like this before, and we're just accustomed to him, moving forward. But this time he did not survive, and Ron MacLean apologized right after what happened Saturday night, and then they decided to remove Don Cherry, and he has subsequently said that he did offer to apologize, but apparently didn't want to do everything they had asked of him, and hence he's now no more on coach's corners. And it needs to be brought up, as Tom and I talked in the past. He is 85 years old, so we knew at some point here in the not so distant future, he was going to have to retire. So maybe that sort of played into it as well. They figured, look, we're gonna have to at some point tell them it's time to move off television. So did they use this as rationale for doing what they knew they were going to have to do at some point anyway?
Yeah. Well, for me, there's going to be, and he is certainly this kind of guy. He is polarizing. Either you love Don Cherry or you are looking for reasons to fire him, right? You don't like him. And clearly, like you said, he has said other things in the past that were probably as bad or worse. This was clearly a case where the people that for me, I'm a Don Cherry fan. I do not approve of everything he says. That doesn't mean I'm not a fan of his. And what he said, I don't agree with, first of all, to say that the people that are coming here, and again, he did not use any race words. He did not use any the word immigrant, but obviously everybody knows what he was saying. And he's so pro-Canadian and pro-hockey, he thinks it's very important that everybody wear a poppy. And he made statements that were, I'm sure, like you said, he would want to take back and apologize for. For the fans of his, we say, okay, well, that's Don Cherry. He loves the country. We don't like everything that he says, but he is so much of a patriot. You love him. The people that don't like him say, listen, that was totally out of line. He needed to go, and he got fired. And like you said, though, he was 85. They were going to have to move on from Don Cherry at some point, and he gave them an opportunity to do that.
What's interesting about that, if Don Cherry would have come out and looked in the camera and said, hey, everybody put their poppy on their lapel, like everybody would have been totally on board with that. Yeah. He wanted more people to wear poppies. Well, nobody's going to argue on that, but it's just when he started to down the path of those people, and I walk around and I look and so forth. And the issue is, and you put it well, like he never really used the words, but everybody in Canada knows the shorthand.
Yeah.
Everybody knew what he was talking about, and ultimately that's it. And he was certainly an enigma, because there were lots of things that everybody appreciated about Don Cherry, the emotion he would have when he talked about an injured young player who had become injured playing the sport, and he was pro women's hockey. He had a lot of time for the military, a lot of time for law enforcement, and he was Mr. Canada. He was very patriotic and pro Canadian player, and that's the other thing too. Had he just stuck to saying how he loved the Canadian players and I want to have Canadian players in my team, he would have been fine. It's just he let it spill over into he couldn't just be pro-Canadian, he had to be anti-European. And that's what ultimately got him in trouble. But we say it got him in trouble, but he lasted 35 years.
I don't think he's going to go away. Just because he's not on Hockey Night Canada anymore doesn't mean Don Cherry will disappear.
No, that's absolutely right. So I want to ask you a little bit. I was intrigued by a story that I watched this morning. Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic and Baseball Network, one of the best baseball guys around, has reported, along with his colleague, that the Houston Astros in 2017, it's been confirmed that they cheated by electronically stealing the signals in the postseason. And the way they did it, they just used, it's very simple. They used the camera in center field. Someone watched the catchers until they picked up the signs and had it figured out. And then to notify the batters, they would use a banging sound. And one bang meant that it was going to be an off-speed pitch, either a curveball or a changeup. And then the players who were standing in the batter's box would hear it. It sounded like a garbage can being slammed against something. Very simplistic, but very effective when you look at the batting averages of the Houston players in the playoffs at home versus on the road, where they were doing it obviously at home. And I bring it up because I thought, is there a comparable, in hockey? The only thing I could come up with, and I'm hopefully maybe you'll think of, but if because it certainly has happened where the equipment guy of a team in the playoffs would go into the visitors room at night when everybody was gone and measure a couple of sticks, and the ones that the curves were illegal, he might notify his coach, and so when they needed a penalty, and of course that not that I don't know how it happened, but in the famous playoff game when Marty McSorley's stick was measured and turned out to be illegal, and they got a power play, they being the Canadians and so forth. That's one of the great legends in sports. So my question to you is, Tom, is that, we always say things and we say it and we laugh. If you aren't cheating, you aren't trying. I
was just going to say that.
Yeah. So the question is do you think it's good? I mean, do you think it's fine for an NHL team if they did that, to sneak into the room and measure the sticks and so forth? And of course, they're trying to find the team who's already cheating with illegal sticks as well.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about all that?
Well, it's interesting. When we knew we were going to talk about it, thinking like I don't really, I don't know if I exactly have an opinion on it. It's one of those deals that, I think to myself, okay, would I cheat to win? If I had a chance to win the Stanley Cup, would I do something to cheat? Well, I think back when we played, there was a much smaller scale, like hooking and holding was a penalty back then. But we hooked and hold as much as we possibly could until the referee called a penalty on us. So is that cheating? I mean, I guess it is. I would, if I could get away with something on the ice and I knew the referee wasn't going to call it, I would do it. I mean, I remember, and it's actually a video I've seen a few times on YouTube where Craig Simpson was playing for Edmonton Oilers, and I was with the Kings at the time, and he was playing with Norm Lacombe, I believe it was, and they had their job was like they were the third or fourth line, and their job was to dump the puck in and just try to run us. So he'd be trying to run me into the inboards. Timmy Waters was my defense partner, so Norm Lacombe would be trying to run him. We were down in the series, I think 3-1, and they were beating us in all ways. They were dominating us, and Timmy and I finally said, "That's enough. Enough's enough." And I told Craig Simpson, I said, "You run me one more time, and you're going to pay for it." And I said it right in front of the referees and everything. And just obviously the game is a lot different back then. The referees more lets you settle it yourself. And he knew, the referee, that Craig Simpson was running me all the time. He knew I was going to do something about it. So next time puck got dumped in my corner, I pretended the puck was in my feet, and my elbow accidentally went up into Craig Simpson's jaw and knocked him down. So referee saw it and didn't call a penalty because he knew what was happening. I was stopping him from running me. Shortly after that, Norm Lacombe went to run Timmy Waters. Timmy Waters submarined him, and Norm Lacombe went headfirst to the boards. So was that cheating? We didn't get called on a penalty for it. We stopped them and they didn't run us anymore. So I guess when I think about it, I think to myself, well, yeah, I would do whatever I had to do to win. That's what you're taught. It's actually when you're in Canada. And I talked about this in terms of Survivor too. When people ask me what's going on in Survivor, you're taught as a young kid in Canada that when you grew up playing hockey, you were very respectful of everybody. It's important to be respectful of the referees, your teammates, opponents, coaches, parents, everybody. But when it comes time to win, you do what you have to do. You are actually told, listen, if you have to break somebody's arm to win, you do it. You're taught that more when you get to the National Hockey League. You do whatever it takes to win. So, I guess when I think it through, I know baseball's a different sport, obviously, but in hockey, I would do whatever it would take to win a Stanley Cup.
Well, that's interesting. I guess the way that I would view it is that, like what you're describing to me is you're just playing on the edge of the rules. Yeah. Like we exalt those guys in the NHL. Like I revere Chris Pronger, Chris Chelios, those guys that played on the edge of the rules.
Yep.
And they played so hard, and were they dirty? Were they mean? And it's the tradition of hockey, I think, that meanness is rewarded, and as you said, doing whatever it takes to win. Now, a guy like Sean Avery came along, and to me took it too far. That nonsense with Marty Brodeur. When he was trying to get him off his game and, putting the stick in front of him and going back and forth. Like, I can't tell you that I would have said beforehand that, that I could have said where my line was. But as soon as I saw Sean Avery did that, to me, that was too far. Like, that's ridiculous. What are you doing? What do you think? And that's beyond the scope of what we wanted to do. Now, but here's the tougher one. And this is where you and I will disagree. Because I've always been troubled by it. You'd say you're willing to break a guy's arm, but I think there's a difference between going out and playing a guy so physical and with the hope or with the desire that he suffers enough pain that he's not going to be as bothersome. But was it okay, even though this is a legendary moment, for Bob Clarke to specifically target Harlamov in that series, to go out and actually, I don't know if it was explicitly said, but to go out and break his ankle or whatever it was. But, Clarke obviously did that. Now, I don't know. I've always kind of wondered whether that seemed like dirty pool. Like when you specifically go out to say, take a guy out so that he can't play in a big series, I think that's completely different than going out and saying, hit that guy 10 times so he thinks twice about coming to our net. It just feels different to me. And, I don't know that I could verbalize it very well, but that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, it definitely is one of those. I mean, the Flyer fans revere Bobby Clark. Right?
Yeah,
obviously the Russians don't revere Bobby Clark; they hate Bobby Clark. Yeah, I'm with you. I just, it's there's a line there, but depending on which side you're on. I mean, we played an alumni game a couple weeks ago against the Bruins, and Kenny Linsman was in the alumni game. And Kenny Linsman he hated him because he was always up to something, like borderline wanting to hurt people out there. And I spent some time with Kenny and had fun with him. It's after the game is done, and he doesn't seem like a bad guy at all. I really don't know him that well. But we were playing the second of the games we played at MSG, and he fell into the boards and got hurt. And not that people wanted him to get hurt in an alumni game, but once he got hurt, a few of us were kind of chuckling. And he wasn't hurt bad, but a few of us were chuckling. Well, couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Yeah, no, yeah, like I said, it's a real gray area, and it's kind of hard to, say. But I guess I don't know exactly where the line is when you go too far, but I know it when I see it happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I
guess Brad Marchand, does he cross the line? Like his team?
Yeah, he does. He does cross the line. He crossed the line when he licks people.
Oh man, that's definitely crossed the line.
Well, yeah, for sure, all that stuff. Like, what are you thinking now? If he walked in, would he say, I'm just trying to get them off their game. I'm doing whatever it takes to win. That's what he might say. Yep. But I would say, no, that's not what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I think I think hockey sometimes is difficult. That line moves a little bit on us, and we have to have a hard time kind of sorting it out.
And the era that we're talking about too, like back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. I mean, it was a much more vicious league. There's a lot of stuff that was going on out there that was sport that wouldn't even be allowed today. I'll never forget when Kenny Baumgartner came up with the LA Kings, and his job was to go beat people up, and he was good at it. He's an intelligent man. But it's so funny. I'll never forget when he first came up. So here we got this veteran team, and Kenny Baumgartner is coming up as a rookie. But we know his reputation, how tough he is. He's got kind of this nutty look to him and everything. And he wanted to listen to this heavy metal music before the game to get himself all wound up. None of the rest of us wanted to listen to it. He would crank it up as loud as possible. But we weren't going to go tell him that he couldn't listen to it. So he'd end up sitting in the locker room all by himself. The rest of us couldn't stand the music, but we weren't going to tell him that he couldn't listen to it. So, that was the reputation he had. But, he was a guy that had a job to do back then, and he did it. But at today's game, obviously, he wouldn't even have a job in the NHL based on what he did.
Well, the line has changed a bit too when you think about. I remember as a kid, although people who were around then said it was the same. But boy, I remember you could deck a guy in the open ice, and guys on the bench would say to the guy, "Well, that you got to keep your head up.
Oh, yeah.
What are you doing?"
Yep.
And there'd be no retribution for laying a clean ice hit. Yep. And now you lay a clean ice hit, you got to still pay a price.
Yep.
And I don't actually like that. If you lay a clean hit,
right,
everybody should say, well, that's within the game here. You got to keep your head up, and that's changed. And the other thing I would say is, in the 1970s, when I was a young fan watching the game, when a brawl started, anything goes. And when a guy came after you, you had expect that he was going to start throwing punches as soon as he got within your airspace.
Yep.
And today, if a guy came flying at you and just started pummeling you, you would say after the game, well, he sucker punched me.
Milan Lucic got suspended for that, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Where in the old days, that was totally acceptable.
Yeah.
Like nobody would feel sorry for you if you weren't ready when Schultz came in and just started throwing punches before you knew you were in a fight.
Yeah.
So it is a kind of a complicated thing. But anyway, the Astros, and I'm a baseball fan too, and to me that just seems way over the line. Stealing signs, by watching a pitcher tip his pitches, that's part of the game. If he's tugging on his belt before he throws a curveball, or that's kind of the fun of the game. But when you're employing a camera and guys and trying to figure it out and beating on with a garbage can lid trying to tell what's going on, now you've gone too far.
Who thought of that too? Like, who thought of beat on the garbage can lid?
Yeah, well, if you think about it, in order for it to be effective, you got to get the information to the batter quickly, and he can't look over at you.
Yeah.
So because the guy's about to throw 100 miles an hour at him. So what do you do?
Let's think about the meeting they're having to decide to do this. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to film the catcher and gets the signs, and then now we got to send the signal. To him. You know what? We're going to beat on this garbage can to let them know what the signal is. Like that's quite a meeting. I mean, meeting.
Yeah, I mean, because they could have just had the third base coach. Well, but he wouldn't know. They could have somebody from the dugout yelling, hey Altuve, we need you now.
Yeah,
meant it was a curveball. that kind of thing. But the garbage can was kind of an added element to it. So but I don't know. That just seems like Oh, and we have it in football too. Remember the deflate game? The Patriots had taken the air out of the ball, and so everybody's always looking for an edge.
Well, and that's the stuff we know about the people who got caught. Imagine all the other stuff that's gone on over the years that nobody's gotten caught.
Oh yeah, when I was a kid, I remember it was a big controversy about the stick 'em on the wide receivers, and people putting grease on their jerseys, and there was always something.
When the visors first started coming out in the 80s, we would put Vaseline on our gloves, on the outside of our gloves, and then we would rub the gloves and the players that had the visors on. We'd rub it on the visor, and they couldn't get the Vaseline off. Their trainers had nothing on the bench to get the Vaseline off. He couldn't see, so we either had to get a new helmet or take it in the locker room. So that player then, who was a lot of times it was a real skilled player, couldn't play for a period of time because he had Vaseline on his visor. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on. I wanted to talk a little bit about Ilya Kovalchuk, who was a healthy scratch. And, when he was signed by the King, I remember thinking, he's with the wrong team. Like, he's still an NHL quality player, but, he needs to be with the right team. Like, he needs to play with a good team.
You think he's in it? See, to me, here's my take. As you know, probably like 4 or 5 years ago, I was covering the KHL. There was a network here in Stamford, Connecticut that was covering the Russian Hockey League. So they would have the feed come over, obviously the Russian broadcasters, so nobody can understand it here. So we would sit in a booth and we would analyze the game. The play-by-play guy do play-by-play, and I do the color commentating. And we were covering Kovalchuk's team one year in the playoffs. And that team, so that was 4 or 5 years ago, benched him in the playoffs, sat him up in the press box for the whole finals. I think it was for the finals. But didn't even play him. And it wasn't his injury. It's like he had done something that, they didn't like, or he wasn't playing well enough, and they set him up in the press box. So there he was over in Russia in a league that's not as good as the National Hockey League, and the team would rather sit him in the press box and play him. Then when I saw the Kings sign him, I'm going, like, especially at his age, what do you do? The league's changing now. And obviously I played for the LA Kings, and I'm friends of Rob Blake and Luke Robitaille that run the team there now. So I'm not trying to indict them on all the things they're doing, but in that decision, I was like, I don't see how he can help you right now, especially at that age. It's not like he couldn't play in the Russian league forever. So to see him be a healthy scratch last night was no surprise to me at all.
Yeah, but he's been an effective player. I get what you're saying. He's, he has had some inconsistency in his career, but I've seen him at the international level, even in 2018, and he was a very effective player playing against, top players, around the world. Like, there's still room in the game for a guy like Ilya Kovalchuk. Is he a perfect player? Well, no. Is he going to cause some issues? But, there aren't that many perfect players.
My problem though, Kevin, is when you've got a younger team, the Kings, they've got to retool that team. They need to change the aura around that hockey team. He's not the guy to do it, right? I mean, we talk so much about the leaders in Boston, like the Chars and Bergeron, because their work ethic, their dedication to the team, their preparation, and you're not seeing that with Kovalchuk. So to me, they're clearly, it's not just about Kovalchuk. To me, it's about sending a message to the rest of the team that his way of doing things just don't cut it around here.
Well, I agreed to that part of it. I thought it was the wrong fit for that team. But, imagine like if he were on the Washington Capitals and he was a second line player, a guy that you're counting on for secondary scoring. Like, I think he'd be a great fit there. I think the Bruins would make him work. I think they could make him an effective player because they don't need him to be a primary guy. And, like if you're based on his ability right now, where would you put him? Is he, are 50% of the players in the league more skilled than he is? Is it 40% of the players? Is it 60%? He's certainly not in the bottom. He's still a guy that can, play the game and find the net. So with the right team and the right fit and the right coach, I think he could be an effective player. But I just don't know that it's the Kings, to be sure.
I agree. Hey, just so you know, just a real thrill for us right now. We got Ron Greshner that's listening to our show here, sending in messages. So what a thrill to have that large nosed individual watching.
Anytime your friends chime in, it's always good.
Yeah.
So, I'm surprised. Has he already sent you a message ripping you a little bit?
No, I think he likes my smile. He's telling me not to smile. I think he's trying to get me going here a little bit. But
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Let's talk about Taylor Hall though, because this is a guy that I said this before the season. If you don't have him signed by now, it just doesn't feel like you're going to get him signed.
Cool.
And you can't go the John Tavares route. You got to get something for him.
Yep.
The Devils aren't in a position where they can let him go away and not get some return. So, and I feel that the perfect place for him to go is Colorado. I said that in September, and I still do.
Yep. Well, and you know what? I think if you're going to trade him, you trade him now. I think the theory of like waiting till trade deadline, and I guess there's some advantage to it, like you get more teams bidding, but I think you're also eliminating teams too. There's probably teams out there right now that think, okay, either we would use him right now to make the playoffs, or we are a contender and can use him to get us over the hump. Why wait until partway through the season? Why not get Taylor Hall now and have him for the big chunk of the season and make your team even better? For me, I think it's, from what I understand, just the rumors I'm hearing, they are having discussions on him now getting him moved. Colorado's a great spot. I'm trying to think of does you go to Dallas, that kind of place too? Again, I'd want to, if I'm a team. I mean, I guess you can go the Columbus route where last year where they got all those free agents, end up losing them. But I would want to be a team that I think to myself, okay, he's really going to want to play here, right? That, you can't get total guarantee. But, again, the advantage is when you sign him, when you get him, then you own his rights and he goes into free agency. He can sign an 8-year contract with you because you own his rights. If he goes as a free agent and signs someplace else, he can only sign for 7 years max. So it doesn't seem like a whole lot that extra year, but if you're talking about $10 million a year, that roughly that number, that's a lot of money. So, that certainly helps them.
Yeah, I think if they're going to make that trade, they might have to give up Bowen Byron, who is their top young defensive prospect. That the Devils probably would like to get like a premium player in return, and he's not close to being ready for the NHL. So it wouldn't be a big hurt for Colorado. And they got Makar, who's already a premium blue chip defenseman. I think they just have to cross that path and be willing to give him up. And I bet that deal can get done.
Yep.
All right. And
we're going to have him moved by the end of the month. Okay.
Okay. Well, yeah, we tried that with Tavares. We were unsuccessful in getting that done. So did we have one final topic? We got
it's Shea Weber and the Montreal Canadiens for me.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm a huge Shea Weber fan. I know he when he got traded, he had some injuries and maybe wasn't playing as well. I think everybody predicted he was getting older and his game was falling apart. And you can see why people would say that. But he is back, and I think playing as well as he's ever played. That team I love. I think he's not the only reason, but I think they kind of take on his personality a little bit. They won't quit. They're that gritty team now. They fall behind, they come back, and they win hockey games in the third period. And I think he's not just such a great player, but his presence, the way he carries himself. I love him as a player, and I think he's making a huge difference in Montreal. And Carey Price, obviously, is back playing his game too. So I think Montreal's really got a good thing going on here, and Shea Weber's back playing the game that he's played in the past.
Yeah, and when he is playing the game at a high level, he's one of the best all-around defensemen. Like, he's got the big shot.
Yep.
He's an intimidating physical presence, and he'll throw his weight around a little bit. He's a good one-on-one defender when he's playing well. So he's got it all. He's got the size. I got a good story about him. I don't know what his metrics are in the analytics right now. I haven't looked recently, but when he was in Nashville, a lot of the analytics crowd didn't like his Corsi, and there was a lot about him that suggested that it didn't go well. And I was talking to Peter Laviolette about it, And he said, I'm into the analytics now. I've really paid a lot of attention to them, and I've looked at that. And I said, well, his numbers and the analytics just aren't very good.
Yeah.
And he laughed. He goes, yeah. He goes, I look at that too. He says, I look at that and I look at that. And he goes, I think about it a lot. He said, but with a minute to go and the game's on the line, I still put Shea Weber out there.
that is true. And I'm with you too. I've come along to really accept the analytics as well. But I watch Shea Weber play. I'm going, man, you're right. I want him on my team. When I started a team, I want Shea Weber on my team. I think he just, it's that he's a leader, the gritty play, the slap shot, the attitude he carries into the game. Yeah, I want him on my team.
Do you think your analytics would have been good?
No, they would not be. Well, because
maybe.
Well, the
you didn't shoot enough.
I didn't shoot enough, and the game was so different too. It was just our style of play was it was banging off the boards and get it. It was always that safe play. So I may have more turnovers, right? Because I'm banging the puck off the boards and get it out into the neutral zone. It wasn't much of a possession game as it is now. I don't think. Frankly, we could get away with much more. One of my favorite plays in our own zone if we get in trouble is you shoot out over the glass. They didn't call the penalty back then. So it's so a lot of things have changed the style of play you play too. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what my analytics would have been. Yeah,
I hate that. I hated that play. To me, that was a 7-year-old soccer.
Oh yeah.
When you get in trouble, the coach when your kid was 7 years old, it's like kick it out of bounds.
Yeah.
So I never liked that play. Yeah, okay. All right. Well, you've been listening to Laidlaw and Allen. I'm Alan. He's Laidlaw. We'll be back next week.
Talk to you guys.